the concept to get a brilliant idea, you have to be very close to ridiculous ideas.
Have you ever wondered how your favorite toys end up in your hands? What makes toy companies such as Lego, Hasbro, and Mattel market leaders? And how have products such as Barbie and Hot Wheels stayed evergreen in a highly competitive industry? My next guest on the 1% Project is Brendan Boyle. Brendan is a toy inventor, an adjunct professor of design at Stanford, and the founder of IDEO Play Lab. He is also the inventor of the world-famous Jumperoo. Listen in to learn Brendan's insights on designing and working in the toy industry, the value of divergent thinking, how Lego and Mattel have kept themselves relevant, and much more. While researching for this conversation, I came across Lego's fascinating turnaround story. From its founding in 1932 until 1998, Lego had never posted a loss. By 2003, it was in big trouble. Sales were down 30% year on year, and it was $800 million in debt. An internal report revealed it hadn't added anything of value to its portfolio for a decade. Consultants hurried to Lego's Danish headquarters. They advised diversification. The brick has been around since 1950s. They said it was obsolete. Lego should look at Mattel, home to Fisher-Price, Barbie, Hot Wheels, and Matchbox, a company whose portfolio was varied and broad. Lego took their advice. In doing so, it almost went bust. It introduced jewelry for girls. There were Lego clothes. It opened theme parks that costed 125 million euros to build and lost 25 million euros in the first year. It also built its own video game company from scratch, the largest installation of silicon graphics supercomputers in Northern Europe, despite having no experience in the field. Lego CEO told his colleagues, "We are on a burning platform. We are running out of cash and likely won't survive." In 2015, the still privately owned, family-controlled Lego Group overtook Ferrari to become the world's most powerful brand. It announced profits of 660 million euros, making it the number one toy company in Europe and Asia, and number three in North America, where sales topped 1 billion for the first time. From 2008 to 2010, during the financial crisis, its profits quadrupled, outstripping Apple's. Indeed, it has been called the Apple of toys, a profit-generating, design-driven miracle built around premium, intuitive, comfortable hardware that fans can't get enough of. Lego's revival has been called the greatest turnaround in corporate history. A book devoted to the subject, David Robertson's Brick by Brick: How Lego Rewrote the Rules of Innovation, has become a set business text. Sony, Adidas, and Boeing are set to refer to it. Google now uses Lego bricks to help its employees innovate. I'll leave the link of the article in the show notes for you to read further. It is fascinating to learn companies such as Lego, Mattel, and Hasbro that have been able to survive had to reinvent themselves. Subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to it, and sign up to the 1% Project's Think newsletter at 1%.live, which brings highly curated content that adds value to your professional and personal development. Stay till the end, where I summarize the key takeaways from the conversation with Brendan. We kick this off by asking him, what is the method to the madness of inventing toys?
Well, we kind of all know what an inventor is, but I specialize in toys and coming up with toy ideas, or my team does. We have the Play Lab has a team of 25 folks working in both toy invention and design for play, both areas. And coming up with toy ideas is interesting. It's a very similar to the design thinking process. We want to start with an insight. We love when something is inspired. So we're out there doing what we would call our design research by understanding what kids are doing, understanding what parents are wanting, and really looking for a need, and then turning that need into something that we can brainstorm around, or something we'll see a bunch of different needs that will turn into a pattern. Then quickly we want to prototype. So toy inventors world is seeing something that's interesting, that looks different, and then coming up with ideas around it, and then quickly prototyping. That can be physical or digital. It just needs to be tangible, something we can put in front of people for testing.
When it goes from idea to the final product, is there a funnel that you have to go through from idea to sales?
Yeah, I mean, the perfect funnel would be, boom, you have a great idea, then you show it to a toy company and they love it and you go to contract. So that's the perfect funnel, but that doesn't happen, and you can't count on that. So the funnel is to come up with lots of ideas and then decide which ones feel worthwhile prototyping. And then taking those a little bit further, we have great relationships. Our business model as a toy inventors is we have great relationships with all the toy manufacturers, such as the Mattels and Hasbros of the world. So we'll go to them with one of our models, and we have a strong enough relationship. So we may go early, sometimes it may be more finished, and they'll give us lots of times it's, oh boy, we've already worked on that, or that's not interesting to us, or, the timing's wrong. So you get a lot of those. We're carefully listening for feedback. And then if we get some feedback that feels strong enough, then we'll go improve the model, then repeat that cycle. So as many sort of cycles as you can get, you'll get to closer to what seems interesting to them, and invention enough for them to actually go to contract, because they have wonderful designers in themselves. But the interesting thing about an IDEO is we're looking in all sorts of different areas because we're working across all different industries, so we can cross-pollinate sometimes, which brings different types of ideas and makes an invention from us hopefully worth paying a little bit extra on a royalty.
You come up with probably hundreds of ideas in a year. So how do you go through that funnel in narrowing down and figuring out these are the ones to work on, these are the ones to pitch? How do you go about that?
Yeah, everyone's trying to figure out the funnel, which is a solid, it should be. We should keep re-examining that. But here's a couple tips that we use. So say we do a brainstorm, we'll come up with 100 ideas in the brainstorm. We'll quickly, as a team, who's ever in the brainstorm, will get to vote on the 5 ideas that they think are the best or worth pursuing. We'll see, it's not a total democracy, but we'll start to see where the butterflies lie. And then some of the more senior folks on the team might do a little more editing. So then we'll decide, okay, we had 100 ideas. We got 10 that look interesting. So let the other 90 fall to the floor. I see too many companies that spend all their time documenting every idea, and that's not as important. What's important is the 10 ideas that you think have some merit, then push those to what we call kind of a tinker time, or a little bit of rough and rapid prototyping. What we want is, at that point, we want high fidelity thinking, but low fidelity prototyping. And then once you start to prototype those 10, maybe 5 seem like they had some merit to push further. So it is that sort of process to brainstorm, let a bunch fall to the floor, then decide which ones you want to experiment on. We see too many companies take one idea out of that brainstorm, then that's the big idea. They're going to push it all the way to the end. And it's too risky that way. You're investing too much if someone's already doing it, or it's just like a new idea came up later in the process. So for us, that's the heart of our process. And then, there's all different levels of models and prototypes as we go forward. And what we've learned, once we start showing a concept, then we're going to have new feedback. So we'll go back and loop again and determine if that feedback's valuable and worth reinvesting more into that concept.
An organization would like to have everybody converge on a single idea, but your thought process is different. Being divergent helps better ideas.
Yeah, we call it, and this is from an IDEO designer who led our Chicago studio, Neil Stevenson. He called it the what's for dinner. So imagine you come home and you ask your partner what's for dinner, and you do a little brainstorm, like chicken, pizza, fish. Oh, let's have pizza. So you diverge for only 3 ideas, and then you quickly converge. So the challenge isn't converging, especially in a professional organization. We got so many folks who know how to converge. Anyone who's gone through education system, you know how to converge. You know how to take a test. You know how to get the answers. You know how to get there. The challenge is to diverge a little bit longer. So if we diverge on the what's for dinner example and came up with 30, we might have a much more interesting dinner. The fallacy, the myth is creative people are always diverging. Their head's always in the star. And at IDEO and Stanford D-School, we don't believe that at all. We think a creative person knows how to diverge a little bit longer, then they start to converge. And the way to converge is not, you have to agree on that one idea out of the brainstorm. This is why we love all right, what are the 5, or which ones do we want to experiment and prototype? Then once we go further and we start to build these little super fun prototypes, whether they're physical, digital, electrical, mechanical, you'll start to see, oh man, that's got traction. Everyone sort of sees something. Then it's easy to converge, like, oh, let's put some resources on that one.
Are toys real concepts in the world?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would argue there was a paper airplane or before a real airplane. I would argue there was a boat before there was a real boat, a toy boat. So I think a lot of toys predict the future around things. So there were probably imaginary cell phones before there was a cell phone talking on your Dick Tracy walkie-talkie watch. So yeah, I think toys can be an inspiration, and it can go any kind of cycle. It's like a movie can start with a script or it can start with a title, or it could start with a book, or it could start. There are lots of different ways, but yeah, I think toys are inspirational. Kind of heard the word toy is derived from the word tool. So toys are tools for kids to go out and learn and express themselves and explore.
Well, that's brilliant. I have never thought of toys being tools for kids, which they actually are.
Yeah, and some are great tools and some are bad tools, just like the tools that we have in our toolbox, right? Like I'm hoping we're designing good tools, but some are like tools that you only use once, and boy, that wasn't good. But others you love and cherish. I suspect most people still have their favorite toy for some reason. They may have been able to hang on to it, and that's a wonderful design goal. If you could design something that you would hang on to forever, I love these things, but I only hang on to it for a couple of years, then I got to get a new one.
Can you break down the toy industry as a business, right? How does that really work?
It's interesting because when I was a kid, we still played with toys till we're 10, 11, 12. And nowadays, kids are out of toys sooner because there's so many other things pulling them. There's screens and other things that get them interesting. Although we had TV that was pulling us, but we were still interested. You give a kid a walkie-talkie now, if your younger audience knows what that is. And they would go, "What's this? Give me a cell phone." Or you give a kid an Etch-a-Sketch, which is a beautiful toy, but it takes more dexterity. It takes about to be an 8 or 9-year-old to really work Etch-a-Sketch. And when you're 8 or 9, you want an iPad or something, right? So the toy industry is constantly trying to stay relevant, trying to reinvent itself, and trying to come up with things that are interesting to kids and parents alike. In their different age grade, younger, which might be more juvenile products, sort of 0 to 1. And then you get sort of toddlers, 2 to 3 or 1 to 3. And then 3 to 6 is kind of the sweet spot for toys right now. And then other toy companies are trying to hang on to kids as long as they can. Lego's doing a pretty good job with that, trying to hang on a little bit longer in the physical world. And then the digital toys and things of that nature can overlap in both. What's interesting about the toy industry is a little company can come up with a big hit, and it's really known by the brand, not the toy company. A lot of people may know Barbie and Hot Wheels, but they might not know it's Mattel, or they might not know it's Hasbro. So there's room for little companies to come in and explode. 25 years ago, Spin Master in Toronto was a tiny little company. There were 3 guys that came together. Now it's multi-billion-dollar top 5 toy company. So there's room for that. It's always excitement to see kind of like innovation.
You've spoken that it is essential to read about the history of an industry and how that helps your own development within the industry as well as understanding. Can you give some background on that? Why do you think that history of any industry matters?
I think it's kind of a neat secret trait. If you joined an industry, say you joined the toy industry, why not go back and read about the history of it? And I found it fascinating that Parker Brothers in the 1890s or something like that helped bring ping pong over to the United States and became a big hit. And then they had to reinvent the ping pong ball because they were flammable and all this kind of stuff. So it's just sort of interesting and fascinating, some of the same struggles that we have now. Some of these toy companies almost went bankrupt because they bet too big on an idea, and then they went in a different way. In the 80s, Mattel and other companies bet big on the video games, and they could have been the big video game companies, but they got too saturated. They had too many folks coming in with different types of video games, and the platforms got saturated, so they got out. And then wait 5-10 years later, and then you have different video game players coming in. So it's interesting kind of to know the history, and it's sort of fascinating. I always coach when I have a student who's really interested in going in, starting a career or whatever it is in, I just kind of tap them and say, look, go find some interesting books about that history. And some of the people that you'll read about are still in the industry. You can go talk to them. It's just something I think if you're going to join, if you're passionate about an area, why not know a little bit about the history too? You'll find it fun and enjoyable.
You talked about Lego. Why do you think Lego has been able to keep itself relevant?
Well, couple of things. But when you say relevant, one of the brands that really, I believe, done one of the best jobs, and I want to come back to Lego, is Barbie. Barbie stayed amazingly relevant, and the head of Barbie design has done a really great job. Right now, the Barbie Dream House is wheelchair accessible, which is awesome. There's a Barbie with prosthetic limb. There's curvy Barbie, a petite Barbie, tall Barbie. There's Barbie with a hearing aid. It's just Barbie's making kids see themselves in toys. And if they don't see themselves in toys, they feel left out. So Barbie's being able to be very inclusive. You know, there's Barbie of every skin color. There's Barbie of, it's just amazing how relevant Barbie's staying. So I think that's great. Lego has done a good job with creating their own intellectual property. They did super well being Star Wars Legos and things like that, but they're paying someone else. At the time, they're paying Lucas. Now they're paying Disney. And they've created some of their own IP, which allows them to sort of control their own destiny a little bit more. The challenge for Lego, and they're working on this, and we've worked on them with this, is a lot of their toys, a lot of their sets are beautiful. You put them together, then you're done. You kind of put it on the wall and it's a trophy. And they're doing a much better job of being relevant on how to play with the toys, continue to play with, make them more playable. And I'm impressed with what they're doing on that. And it's a good challenge. And we were involved in a little bit of that challenge.
Let's talk about IDEO. Why does IDEO like T-shaped people?
So when we call a T-shaped person, let me explain for your audience. We use T-shaped to help describe when we're hiring someone. If they have a T, the I part of the T is a craft. They have a deep craft, and that could be in design research. It could be in computer science. It could be in robotics. But the T across the top means they're interested in design thinking. They're really interested in other disciplines. And basically, for us, it means they want to play well with others. If you're just an I-shaped person, you're really smart sometimes and you're a guru, but all you want to do is work on that one thing. We have so many different types of projects happening. We want that T-shaped person because you're on a team and you need to work well, play well with your other team members. So that's what we mean by a T-shaped person.
Over the videos that I watched, the content I read, I saw that you have taken a conscious effort on becoming much more fitter and healthier. Is that a conscious lifestyle you've made, or it just happened?
Years ago, we were doing some project for the North Face. And Todd Spilato was the president at the time. Great guy. He's over at Dick's Sporting Goods now. Or he's at the public trust. He's a division of theirs that's really amazing. And we were talking about running 10Ks, and we didn't want to run 10Ks anymore just because all that, like, getting ready. And he said, well, you should join the 300 Club. And I said, what's that, Todd? And he said, well, it's just a bunch of us at North Face who want to work out 300 days of the year. And you can do anything you want. The thing about exercise, and I always coach people, do something that you find fun. And I used to be quite a bike rider. I knew all about bikes, and people would come up to me and they'd say, Brendan, I got these 2 bikes. It's this model or this model. Which should I get? I said, well, which one has the color you like more? And they said, well, what would that possibly matter? I said, if you like the color of your bike, you're going to ride it more, right? And you'll be proud of it. So do things that are fun. And then I think it's the mind-body connection. People have heard me tell this. When I say, if you're going to run with me, you have to start slow, then we're going to taper off. It's just about moving. And for me, movement is a little bit about moving meditation sometimes when I lose myself in thought on a slow run or something of that nature. So I think that's important, but it's just do something you like. It could be steps, it could be whatever. But if you're forcing yourself to do something on a behavioral change, it's probably not going to work.
Throughout your career, inventing products, what have you learned as an entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur, when you begin, it's such a roller coaster ride. You're so excited, and then in my world, when you invent something, it's 2 years before it hits the market. So there's lots of chances for it to drop. So you'd be a new inventor, and you'd have something, and then right before Toy Fair, it dropped, and you're sort of holding your head low and telling your friends, your colleagues, oh, I had something in that line, but it just dropped. And you're like, yeah, sure. It's sort of understanding, oh, it's awesome when it's there, but realize it might not. So it's sort of smoothing those roller coasters out a little bit. And then it's also, I'm still incredibly grateful when I see something we worked on hit the market. It still surprises me. It still feels like, wow, that's great. So there's no taking it for granted, like, oh, we deserve that, right? Like it is sort of a hustle. It's sort of a creative hustling in a good way.
Two things on that. One, I think I want to go back to something you had mentioned earlier. One is, how do you get the timing right? Or how do you assess timing for launching a product?
Well, the launching the product's up to the toy company. So our timing is like, what's the best time to show a concept? So it's not too early or too late. And we sort of understand all different toy companies' timing, so we want to be in there when it's appropriate. But saying that, there's no set timing, because sometimes a product drops and a toy company has an instant need, and what do you have for us, and things like that. So it's more like just being ready all the time. And if you do have a lull, we spend a lot of time sort of making sure we're organized and efficient. So when we do have to make stuff, we know where things are. It's interesting. Like, people think creative folks are just like, their place is always a mess and all that. I think a really creative studio can be a mess at the end of a creative session, but after that, it's like, you can't take you can't take a Formula One car and have a mess in the shop. You need to know where things are if you're going to fix it up. Stuff. So there's a lot of effort on that, so you're ready and prepared.
Do you think people with an OCD can be creative?
I don't know about that, but yes, I wouldn't assume not, but I have no experience in that, but I wouldn't assume not. Perhaps so. I would love to do a little digging and see the research on that.
3 books and why?
One is The Spare Room by Emily Chang, and she's a CEO, and it's all about a family manifesto. It's fantastic. It's around, they had a spare room, and she has one daughter, and they had a spare room, and it's about 17 different kids they've helped foster and move on to a better life. And it's just, and it's also a great leadership book, which I find just so interesting, because she's leading a team of 500. So she puts in a lot of lessons in there. So that's great. The other is Stroke of Insight. It's about she's a brain surgeon. She has a stroke, and while she's having the stroke, she realizes what she's doing. And then it's all about her recovery and her insights around this whole process, which was fascinating. And then a third one, I got it in front of me, which is so fun. I just read this one. This is Superbook. This is all about Whammo. And this is by Tim Walsh, who's becoming a good buddy. And he's written a couple of books in the toy industry, but Whammo is the ones that did the hula hoop and the frisbee and the Super Bowl, and it's just amazing. It's a lot of goofy. I wrote a book with John Cassidy, the founder of Klutz, called the Klutz Book of Inventions, and it's all around the concept. To get a brilliant idea, you have to be very close to a ridiculous idea. So this Whammo stuff reminds me, because it was before us, because we came up with 164 you decide brilliant or ridiculous inventions, so we put them in the book.
What advice will you give to your younger self?
If I could go back, undergrad at Stanford, I kind of found my way, because I did my undergrad in engineering at Michigan State, and then I did my grad at Stanford. And at Stanford, it felt like fit, because the shop was open. I'm meeting artists. I'm meeting other makers. It was great. My younger self, I would have said, I treated every class kind of equal. Even if the class I hated, I treated it equal, and I put equal effort into it. Versus the class, index heavy on the stuff you love. Like, really go in there and see if there's more and more there. And the stuff that you don't love, like, just get through it. Don't worry. I worried too much about the grades on classes I didn't even care about.
Before I let you go, what is the nicest thing that anybody has done for you?
That's an interesting question. I love when I get a note from a student years later saying, the class really transformed me and it did something. That's really meaningful. So it's something like that. It's just, and maybe it's the way my mom raised me, like, write a thank you note. But you can really make someone's day if you actually write a physical note and send it to them, especially if someone who changed you. And I've done that to folks that have changed me, and it's really nice. So you can pay that one forward.
Brendan, that's a great place to close this conversation. Thanks for being on the show.
British, I really enjoyed all your questions. And yes, let's stay in touch. And fantastic. Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed the conversation, Brendan. Here are the 3 key takeaways from the conversation. Number 1, the process of bringing an idea to a final product involves coming up with many ideas, prototyping, and presenting the model for feedback. By carefully listening to feedback, improving the model, and repeating the process, inventors can increase the chances of success in bringing in their ideas to life. Number 2, understanding the history of an industry can be beneficial for personal development and success in that industry. By learning about past companies' struggles and triumphs, individuals can gain a deeper understanding of the current state of the industry and its potential future directions. And finally, as an entrepreneur, it is essential to manage expectations and be prepared for the ups and downs that comes with creating and launching a new product. It is crucial to remain optimistic and grateful when something succeeds, but also to recognize that failure is always a possibility. Being able to navigate the roller coaster ride of the entrepreneurship requires a certain level of resilience and creative hustle. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who will find it valuable. And for any recommendations and feedback, you can drop me a line at pritish@1%.live. Until next time.